Welcome to this week's edition of Outdoors Online, a weekly webcast produced by the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. I'm your host, Tom Jensen. My guest this week is Jerry Weigel. Jerry is in charge of the fish stocking program for the Game and Fish Department. We're going to talk about the program itself and what it's done for fishing in North Dakota. Jerry, I don't think anyone would argue that fishing has never been better in our state.
Right, and anybody that's been around here the last 5-6 years has noticed lots of rain, lots of snow, lots of water in the landscape, and water that's sticking around a decade or more. And so what that provides is just phenomenal opportunity for us to work with private landowners or public entities to add more fishing lakes, and that's probably been the biggest growth we've seen. Where we're back, say, 15-20 years ago, we had maybe 150, 180 public fishing waters across the state. We're over 400, almost 420 right now. And of course, that puts a demand on our fish hatchery system. And we're blessed in North Dakota with the two national fish hatcheries that we have substantial fish production capability, and we're pushing them as hard as we can push them these last few years.
People might be amazed to know that we've been stocking fish in North Dakota, and the way we stocked fish way back when, since the 1800s.
Right, yeah, the late 1800s, early 1900s, actually be the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the federal government, seeing a need for fish, especially as you went west. And so they actually were pretty innovative. Railroads were big back in the day, and they actually built a couple, they called them fish cars, that were rolling aquarium that they would swing by a hatchery in the eastern part of the United States, and they would, as they rolled west, they'd stop in North Dakota, Montana, and they strategic places, and unload live fish, and they'd go on wagons or horseback and go out and stock some lakes. So yeah, we actually have stocking records back into the early 1900s and even some late 1800s.
Now, of course, that was back when we had a minimum number of lakes. Like
Right.
you mentioned before, now we are stocking a record number of lakes in North Dakota.
Right, yeah, again, with all this growth of all the water out on the prairie, and then the opportunity for fishing lakes. There's a little bit of where lakes are connected, where fish will naturally move from one to the other, but for the most part, if there's walleyes in a lake, they probably got there from the department stocking them, perch and things like that. And we've actually had a chance to learn some things on how we manage lakes, say over the last decade, but there's no doubt that we've been Johnny Appleseed with trying to put create as many fisheries as we can out there.
Oh, and a lot of these smaller lakes, I can think of at least a half a dozen right off the top of my head that have become instant fisheries,
Right.
Just great fisheries.
Well, and the good thing about that too is the crowding factor. We certainly we've seen record license sales, fishing license sales the last 5-6 years. Every year it's more and more and more. And you would expect it because of what we got going on, let alone for our citizens of the state, but also for our non-residents are pretty keen on what's going on here out in the North Dakota. And so there's lots of non-resident folks coming, but all these extra fishing lakes helps spread out the use. So hopefully folks can still go out there and have a lake to themselves, which you can, in fact, and or have a phenomenal fishing experience more times, a fishery that lasts and isn't just really pounded real fast.
You mentioned earlier, Jerry, of course, we are fortunate to have two fish hatcheries, federal fish hatcheries in Garrison and Valley City. Keeps us from having to do the old horse and buggy thing, and you've got pretty sophisticated equipment, but the hatcheries are really...
Right. I mean, literally since they were built in the 50s, we've had a long-standing relationship with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. There's the National Fish Hatchery, Garrison Dam, and then there's another one at Valley City. There's the Bald Hill Station that's part of the main Valley City hatchery. And in both cases, we have kind of a unique working relationship where the state goes out and for the most part gathers the eggs, brings them back to the hatchery. The hatchery folks raise them for say a month or so, to try to get our 1.5-inch, 2-inch fingerling, and then we come back, the state comes back and trucks all the fish to all the waters across the state. The state certainly shares the burden of the cost of production, but the Fish and Wildlife Service is certainly helping with their share, and it's just been a great relationship, and again, a real benefit with all this water to have access to fish, to really push these fisheries and get them up to speed really fast.
With all this water, like you mentioned, Jerry, 10 years ago we were stocking maybe 150 lakes. How many are we doing now?
We're managing about 420 lakes in the state, which is the all-time record. The amount we stock, it's kind of evolving, because as we get lakes up and running, we don't have to stock them. We hope Mother Nature, and Devil's Lake is a great example. We haven't stocked Devil's Lake in a number of years now, and yet it continues to be a great fishery up there.
So how many do you stock every year?
The
Just
numbers,
on average.
I would say it's over 200 fishing waters that we stock. Walleyes alone is around 160 walleye lakes we're stocking each year, which is up from probably 70 or 80 walleye lakes 10 years ago, or even less.
What species?
We started out the year doing some trout, our catchable trout around the state, and then we move into northern pike. We still have some lakes that are both for the angler, and also some lakes that are just shallow, and they maybe have issues with winter kill, summer kill every 3-4 years, and we really just couldn't get a walleye fishery going. So having something to catch is what we're after for the angler. So we do some northern pike, and then we're moving into walleyes now. We'll start those here actually tomorrow, and then as that wraps up, we'll have some largemouth bass that we stock, and then we're still doing muskies in the fall, and some Chinook salmon up in Lake Sakakawea, various trout species in the river, and these are species that we do at the hatchery. And in addition to that, our field folks will trap wild adult fish out of lakes with abundant population, and move species like yellow perch. The majority of our yellow perch are moved around the state that way. We've been doing a lot more work with catfish for kind of kids programs, because they seem to do a lot better in the summertime when a lot of the trout and things just don't bite. So the guys are moving catfish. They'll even move some adult northern pike in a lake that doesn't have anything, or just, so they're moving species. Crappie and bluegill are commonly moved with adult populations. So we work with, say 12 species or more to provide a variety of things out there.
Jerry, is it fair to say that in a lot of cases, these small lakes, these small opportunistic lakes in many parts of the state would not have catchable fish in them if it wasn't for the stocking program?
Well, and a good example of that is these new lakes that we're continuing to add, like even this year or next year, they just didn't fill up with water this past winter. They've probably been sitting there full of water for 3, 4, 5 years now. We've just either worked with a local landowner or physically getting around, because we haven't really we haven't had a growth in our staff, so it's the same staff trying to tackle all these waters. And so, yeah, obviously they're sitting out there. They're probably full of fathead minnows and sticklebacks and things like that, fathead minnows in particular. But if they're not connected to another lake or with a river or something, the walleyes and northerns and things like that will not get in there.
Okay, so you need some kind of a forage base in these small lakes before we'll go in.
Well, and again, out on the prairie here, generally we're so blessed with food. And that's where some of these fisheries, the kind of growth we're getting, the kind of pounds, or just say the number of 1-pound walleyes that you can take out of a lake out in the prairie is off the chart compared to a traditional walleye lake in, say, Wisconsin or something like that.
You and your crews are just about to get very busy. I notice you're getting a little antsy to get on the road here. Any bumps in the road that you can foresee coming up?
Well, weather is always a thing, but you almost have to be excited about those rainy days in fisheries, because it means more water for the fish. So, you'll have some of that. The fish that are being raised in the hatchery, Mother Nature is really in control, just like a lot of our crops across the state here. And so you just don't know exactly how good that crop is until you're harvesting it. And we'll start harvesting it here real soon, and it certainly looks good. We're shooting for 10 million walleye, which is, like the last few years, is just pushing the hatcheries to the max. And so we're hoping for good things. Obviously, all the rains that we've had now the last few weeks. The receiving water should be really good. Lots of food. I mean, if you're driving on the prairie and your windshield's getting all bugged up, that's a good thing. That means there's lots of food and the prairie's alive, and it's going to really raise our fish.
Are we stocking anything different this year?
You know, not really nothing different. You know, a part of it, when you're being pushed so hard like we are with walleyes, you obviously have to make some choices and priorities. And right now, we know that we can get probably the best bang for the buck, both in the hatchery system and even out in our public waters with walleye. So we're kind of prioritizing walleye right now, which limits our opportunity to do other unique things, and yet. You know, things continue to do well in terms of smallmouth bass. We haven't cut back like on trout, and yellow perch has obviously grown, and so we certainly are trying to continue with all the other species programs too.
You and your crews are obviously doing a wonderful job. Fishing's never been better, Jerry. Thanks.
You bet.
Here's a quick reminder: if you plan to celebrate the 4th of July this year with fireworks, they are not allowed on wildlife management areas across North Dakota. Excessive noise and commotion that come with fireworks disturbs wildlife, and they're also a potential source of wildfires. Chances of a wildfire developing are greatly enhanced when explosives such as fireworks come in contact with tall grasses in rural areas. A complete list of the wildlife management area regulations is available at the Game and Fish website at gf.nd.gov. For Jerry Weigel and the rest of the staff here at North Dakota Game and Fish, thanks for joining us for Outdoors Online. We'll see you again next week.